The imperfect tense. This is a video for WriteLatin.org using the Lingua Latina per se illustrata curriculum. These are the things we will cover in this video. If you are on YouTube, look down in the video description to be able to jump to each of these things. Or if you're not, look down right here in the space below on the PowerPoint. If you're on YouTube, I also suggest that you download the PowerPoint of this that I'm using here. You can use it in your class for free. Today we're going to first review the present tense and then completeness versus incomplete, and that will set the stage for learning the imperfect, understanding what it is, and then we'll do two different types of drills. You may of course click on any of these to jump to them at the time. As a short review, remember the thumb towards you means I, that's you, he, she, or it, we, y'all, they. Up till now, we've just had to deal with the present, but now we have another tense from what's called the present system, which is these three tenses. All these three tenses use what is called the present stem up here. And now, I would like you to tune me out here when I give you this rule here, because it's going to badly confuse you. And you're going to think to yourself, how can I memorize this? Well, you don't need to. I will give you a simpler shortcut in a second on the next slide. But this is the old traditional way that you learned how to create the imperfect tense. What they would say is, okay, first divide the first two conjugations, which are, I call these not the first and second conjugation. I don't call them the third conjugation, the third IO conjugation, and the fourth conjugation, although most people call them that. I just call them A verbs, long A verbs, because the present stem ends in long A. Long E verbs, because the present stem ends in long E. Nothing verbs, because the present stem ends in no vowel at all. Short I verbs, and then long I verbs. Now, the I is not long here, but it is long over here in the second principal part. Okay, so this is the present stem. And the traditional rule given to people on how to get this stem is what you see here in yellow. They used to say, well, for the first two conjugations, take the second principal part and remove RE. And so you would think to yourself, oh, gee, okay, so what's the second principal part? Okay, now imagine myself removing RE, and what am I left with? This is totally unrealistic. No Roman speaker would have done this. You can't even do it on the spot because it's so hard to think through this. So I don't recommend that you do this, but that's the first half of the rule to get the present stem. The second half of the rule is down here. They would say for the last two conjugations, including the third IO, take the first principal part and remove the O. Okay? So you can see this was really complex because it's using two separate rules, really, to get the present stem. It shouldn't be like that. And then when they wanted you to produce the imperfect, this is what they would say. They'd say start with that present stem and then add on the tense sign, which for the imperfect they would say, well, it's BA, and then your personal ending, MST musticenti. And, so you would do that for the first two conjugations, but then you get down here to the third conjugation and they'd say, well, actually we need a connecting vowel also. So they would say, well, now insert a connecting vowel, long E, and then put your tense sign and then your personal endings. And so now it was even more complex, because now you'd remember that some of these conjugations get a connecting vowel also. And so you notice how messed up this all is. By the way, don't pay attention to the future over here. We're going to get that next chapter. But, okay, so rather than doing all of this, just notice something here. We have a long A, BA, long E, BA, long E, BA, long E, BA, long E, BA. So the simpler rule to remember is this. Again, ignore the futures on the right. For the first long A verbs, the sign of the imperfect is long A, BA. For everything else, it's long EBA. And now, bingo, you can quickly say it. Now be careful. Don't lose the short I or the long I. remember, add your long EBA after that final vowel. But other than that, it's really simple. So that's what we're going to do today. You're going to make the imperfect tense. All right, but what is the imperfect tense? Well, this is the house of Latin. These are the 6 tenses of Latin. Okay, what was the present system? The present, the future, and the imperfect. All right, and you can see that present is in green, the imperfect is in green, and the future is in green. So all of these are what I would call the stable regular tenses. And so these are the stable tenses of the house of Latin. And you can see that there are other tenses in orange which are relative to these stable tenses. Okay, so you can see here how those tenses are relative to these. Someday when we learn the pluperfect, it will be relative to the imperfect. It will include some of the imperfect in it, for instance. But these are the most fundamental, the most basic, and pretty much the most easy. So we've already learned the present. Now we're going to learn the imperfect. Okay, so the imperfect is a tense signifying action that was ongoing in the past. And see how this is how I express ongoingness. It's not at one little point, but it is stretched out in time vaguely. You don't know exactly when it occurred. And all of these are ongoing in the past. The grammatical technical term for that is that they are incomplete. So now let's learn about this concept of completeness. Okay, so in these PowerPoints, there are 2 kinds of completeness. There's complete action and incomplete action. Okay, so what are these? Well, complete action is action that happened at a distinct moment in time. It's finished and is no longer occurring. So like, he ran. It happened at one moment. Or they ate. It happened at a moment and it's done. But incomplete action is action that's ongoing. And it's not necessarily finished. It might even still be going. So like, they were eating. If they were eating, is it possible that they're still eating? Yeah, it's possible. Okay. So that I want you to recognize these things. When you see a symbol like that, think of complete. And when you see a symbol like that, think incomplete. All right? So which one is this? Right, complete. And which one is this? Incomplete. Very good. All right. So the imperfect tense, you see, is always incomplete, and it is always in the past. Now these 2 things, time and completeness, are the 2 attributes of tense. And what that means is they are the 2 ways in which tenses can vary. You know, some tenses can change this and no longer be past, but be present or future. And some tenses can change this and still be past, but be complete instead. And we'll have a different name for that tense. That won't be the imperfect. Someday it will be the perfect. But okay, so for today, all you need to understand about the imperfect is that its 2 attributes are its time is past tense and its completeness is incomplete. So here's the imperfect. And remember, the 2 signs of the imperfect are ABA and EBA. And then we're going to put below it on these endings, MST, mostis, NT, for I, you, he, she, it, we, all, they. Remember, the present was similar. It was OST, mostis, NT. All right, and we've seen this already. All right, when we say this, let's think a moment about how we say this. We're going to have a long A or a long E before the BA. Aba, aba. So when you say these words, you want to really express and emphasize that long A or long E. And that should make the wave sign of your voice do something like this. You know, as time is passing, you should emphasize that A. Wokabam, wokabas, fakiebam, fakiebas, if it was that word instead. Or eram, eras. Well, eram doesn't do it as much. Now, what is this eram? This is the word to be. And obviously, it's different from other imperfect words because it has no ba. It's special. Okay, so let's start practicing this. Wokaba, and then something. And the way you translate it is was blanket. So let's just say that. The imperfect stem is the present, is wokaba, wokaba. And so you say it. Wokabam, wokabas, wokabat, wokabamos, wokabatis, wokabant. And remember what these all symbolize. This, of course, means they. They were calling. Yeah, so the translation is going to be was or were calling. The singulars, of course, will be was, and the plurals, of course, will be were. So let's do that again. I was calling, you were calling, she was calling, we were calling, y'all were calling, they were calling. How nice. All right, so you can go through on the PowerPoint and practice all these. So like on the next slide, I want you to say it from memory. Wokabam, wokabas, wokabat, wokabamos, wokabatis, wokabant. Just say that from memory. And then do it again just like this. Wokabam, wokabas, wokabat, wokabamos, wokabatis, wokabant. And then last of all, turn away from your screen and say it just from memory, making the sign yourself with your hand. And say, wokabam, wokabas, wokabat, and point. And then use two hands, wokabamos, wokabatis, wokabant. So you have to drill yourself and make sure that you know how to do it. Okay, so what word would this be? Well, I hope you answered that this is the we, so it would be wokabamus. Very good, wokabamus. What about that one? Okay, and you get the hang of it. I don't need to do all this. You can go through all the practices. Later on, you will come into the house of Latin drills, and they look like this. This is almost identically the same. Oh yes, and let's go over again what the different parts of the word symbolize and how we signify and how we should express the word, therefore to maximally signify those concepts. So the woke part means call, which that's the action. The aba means that it was ongoing in the past. Can you just even hear that when you say aba? Hear how long it takes you to say that? Well, that is how you know that it was ongoing. And it wasn't at just one point in time, but it was ongoing. So emphasize that A. Wokabam. Okay? And then last of all, the ending signifies they. All right. Okay, so let's do this. What is this? Wokabas, which means you were calling. And you can do another, and you can do all of them. So I want you to be able to say these in Latin. Wokabamos. You see, you take your woka, add your ABA, and then the mus for the double thumbs pointing at you. All right, so enjoy it and go at it until you feel like you know everything about producing the imperfect tense. Wale, waleta.